I'm Quayla Nassar. We as Orthodox Christians spend 40 days of Lent and then Holy Week in preparation and anticipation of Pascha, known as Easter in the Western Church. So why is this joyous celebration the crown of the liturgical year in the Orthodox faith? And how does it prepare us for our life and for eternity? Father John Abdullah will be talking with Father John Talumas. He's pastor of the Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, Holy Trinity, on the north side. And they're going to be talking about Pascha and how you prepare for it, and our wonderful greeting, Christ is risen. Truly he is risen.
Christ is risen.
Truly he is risen, Father John.
It's a joy to have you with us.
Thank you.
Father John, Pascha for the Orthodox is everything. Feast of feasts, the holy day of holy days. What's that about? Help us understand.
For us as Orthodox Christians, there is a very rich liturgical life and ecclesiastical calendar, and there are certain feasts that rise above others, feasts that celebrate events in the life of the Lord, in the Mother of God and the Virgin Mary, and of course great saints of the Church. But of all of them, as you said, what is called the Feasts of Feasts and the Festival of Festivals is the mother feast of all of them, which is the Holy Resurrection, because without that resurrection, as St. Paul says, we are all fools, and there is no opportunity to even have a Christian faith. So it is the fountain from which all celebrations in the Church spring.
Quaylin was talking about the preparation for this feast, you know, and so we fast in order to feast, and we have the 40 days of Lent before the renewed journey of Holy Week, which is a separate journey, and we have the weeks before Lent start, the triodion of time of preparation to prepare for the preparation for the feast. Is all that fasting and preparation really necessary, or can we just get to the party?
It really truly is reflective of the cycle of our life overall, as well as the many phases of our life that we go through as Orthodox Christians. There are many times where we anticipate a celebration, and yet there is preparation that is necessary to really celebrate that in the fullness of joy. And in the preparation for the celebration of Pascha, we pay attention to the control that the various passions and the various desires of our life hold over our body, over our soul, over our existence in this world, and we do our best to be sure that we have oriented ourselves towards fully doing the will of Christ and being able to see clearly what the will of God is for our life.
So our preparation is to be free from the things that will distort the joy, that will steal the joy, that will tie us up, so that we can really experience God's pure love and really enter into the celebration with that light and unburdened.
It is, and indeed
statement.
That's a wonderful way of reflecting the fact that Lent for us is a physical and spiritual preparation, because Pascha for us is a reflection here in this world of the fact that we as Orthodox Christians celebrate and anticipate the resurrection as both physical and spiritual. In fact, it was St. John of Damascus who talked about that unity of celebration, physically and spiritual, of Pascha and the anticipation of the resurrection, because he said, indeed, that we believe in the resurrection of soul and body because both the soul and the body participated in this life and in the journey to the resurrection, and therefore we will be receiving the resurrection in both soul and body, the fullness of our being.
Yeah. So the body is not evil, like some people say, or bad. That Christ took on flesh and restored the dignity of our bodies, of our minds, of our physical states, because we can use these states to smell the incense and the sweetness of God, taste, touch, feel, experience God, who wants us to be close to Him, who wants us to come to Him, who wants to be close. You know, you mentioned St. John of Damascus. The present bishop of Damascus wrote a little book called The Resurrection of Modern Man. And And in this book, he says that Pascha is a lens, you know, like the glasses that we see and experience the whole world through. Imagine facing the work that we have to do every day through the lens of that empty tomb, and how everything is so different. How does that relate to your life right here in Pittsburgh?
Well, I can tell you how it relates very clearly to the Paschal celebration that we're about to go through, because you mentioned Holy Week, and you mentioned, of course, the preparation and the celebration for Pascha. One of the, for me as a priest anyway, one of the most magnificent and revealing readings during the entire Holy Week celebration is the reading from the prophecy of Ezekiel concerning the dry bones. And the bones, exactly, and when that Old Testament reading is seen through the lens, as you spoke of the resurrection, we can now begin to get that God's eye view of what was indeed being prophesied that would later be manifested in the resurrection of Christ. Because as those dry bones took on sinews and flesh and were constituted into forms of new life, they spoke to us prior to even the coming of Christ of what Christ would do to death in conquering it and bringing about new life in His heavenly kingdom for us all. It's a very exciting experience.
Father John, on other occasions I've heard you talk about this God's eye view, and I just think it's magnificent. Could you share a little bit about that for our viewers today?
Perhaps it helps get into the idea of the Orthodox concept of time and its observation and its liturgical celebration, because one of the very important things for us to remember as Orthodox Christians is that we do not simply repeat something as a liturgical celebration or as a commemoration long past, because if that was it, we would simply dust off the books for Pascha every year and go through the motions one more time. But our understanding is that because God is the God who has created all of heaven and earth and indeed created time through the marking of the seasons, that He is above and beyond time, and so therefore it is not Pascha that is being recreated, but it is the veil of that mystery being lifted that we may again join in that celebration as it occurred at that very moment, at its inception, because we are given the grace, as the hymns say, of today Christ is risen.
How great is today. Imagine, today we stand in the midst of the church, in the body of Christ, with our forebears who loved Christ and embraced Him, and with our great-great-great-grandchildren. That we stand together in the church outside of time, because we're already inside of Christ, with those who have come before us and embraced Christ, and those who we're passing the faith on to and will embrace Christ. And we're standing together with these folks who we don't know yet, but God knows.
And in that reality, one of the very moving experiences during the Lenten season, which gives us a glimpse into the life of the resurrection, is that at my particular community that I'm serving at Holy Trinity, we have the blessing of having our own cemetery. And at the cemetery, we recently built a church. And when we do the Saturdays of the Souls during the Lenten season, one of the most moving experiences of that liturgical life for me is to be able to sense not only the congregation, but to open the doors of the church and sense those who are already awaiting resurrection, who have already gone on to that next step, who are lying in the tombs awaiting the coming of Christ. And we know, as St. Paul says, that they will precede us in celebration. And so therefore, as those who come to commemorate the departed see the departed awaiting the resurrection of Christ, the understanding is there that we will all be celebrating that together.
I wonder if Kuei Lin had all this in mind when she talked about what this festivity and feast really is all about, because you're really giving us a glimpse of an understanding of just how great and magnificent it is to stand inside the body of Christ with the living and the departed all together, with the angels, with the saints, that kind of harmony and witness, all coming together to do what delights the Father, that his children gather around, you know. As Christ said, like a hen gathers her chicks to celebrate. We have to be happy for is that the tomb is empty and the message is real and Christ is who he says he is and the kingdom of heaven is opened up for us.
And one of the developments that I had personally on my understanding of the resurrection relates to exactly what you said about the empty tomb and standing in the resurrection. Because during the end of my first year of seminary, I had the blessing of being able to travel to the Holy Lands. And as guests of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, traveling with one of the professors from the school, we were able to actually sort of get an inside view of a lot of the things that are celebrated and a lot of the places that are celebrated. And one of the things I had a chance to do, a great blessing, I actually had time to spend in the tomb of Christ. Not just in the Church of the Sepulchre, but at the very tomb of Christ. And it was a phenomenal experience. And prior to our arriving at the tomb, we questioned one another. And I think more it was the professor questioning us.
Father John, you have whet our appetites, and we are more than a little bit excited. But before we get to hear what you have to say, we have our dear friend, another Father John Chake is coming, to tell us a little bit about practically how we celebrate and what we do to celebrate. So after Father John shares some of the celebration, let's come back to Jerusalem and the tomb of Christ and be enlightened by the light.
Why is Easter celebrated on a different Sunday each year? Jesus Christ's passion and resurrection occurred during the Jewish Passover. Therefore, Christians follow the Jewish calendar and celebrate Easter on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. The Orthodox also take seriously the ancient rule that the Christian Passover must follow the Jewish feast and not precede it. So in some years, it may fall much later than in others.
I'm Quayla Nassar, and we are talking with Father John Chakas of Holy Cross in South Hills. Christ is risen.
Truly he is risen.
You know, Pascha is always one of those wonderful times after you've gone through Lent. But I know that in many ethnic cultures of the Orthodox faith, there are so many traditions. And tell me a little about the Greek traditions. What's for Greek dinner?
Well, lamb is the centerpiece. Everyone waits for the lamb. So they go out and get a nice spring lamb and prepare it, and everyone looks forward to that. Over the period of the fast, the 40 days and all of Holy Week, this is very greatly anticipated. Then there is the dying of the Easter.
You say they go out and get the lamb. Is it the whole lamb or just?
Many times they'll go out to a farm and get a whole lamb and they'll kill the lamb. In fact, some of the Greeks that I knew would keep the lamb in their basement alive, and then when it came time for Pascha, they would kill it, and then they would cook it on the spit.
How encouraging!
So it was a big, exciting time to see.
My grandfather used to do. My grandfather used to slaughter his own sheep as well, or lamb actually. Okay, so all right, so you have this great, wonderful dinner.
Right. Now there's also a soup that is typical in the Greek culture. It's called margeritsa. It's made with lamb lungs. It doesn't sound too good.
No.
And if you're not Greek, you probably won't like it. But for those of us that are used to it, it's kind of tasty, and we kind of expect it, you know. There's also, of course, the Easter egg dyed red.
Now let's talk about the Easter eggs for a moment. The Easter eggs that are dyed red. Is there a significance in having them dyed red? Because I mean, when we go to church, I'm of the Antiochian faith or jurisdiction, and when we go to church, we have the red Easter eggs at the end of the service.
Right.
What's the significance of the red?
The red was taken from the tradition of with Mary Magdalene, because when she was preaching the gospel to Caesar, he told her that he couldn't believe the story. It was a beautiful story. It was, you know, the idea of the resurrection. But he said, I'll only believe it if those eggs over there turn red. So she prayed, they turned red, and that's how the story of the red behind the Easter egg occurred. And of course, we break the eggs. The symbolize the opening of the tomb, new life, the beginning of new life. And of course, there's a lot of, everyone has a great deal of fun just breaking each other's eggs to see whose eggs can hold up. And, you know, so that's a big part of it as well, the excitement of that.
Yes, see, and now one of our traditions was, at least with my grandfather, and still, you held the egg, they cracked it on top, and then whoever cracked it would take the egg. They got a little, they got an extra egg out of that.
That's nice. Yeah, it was a good deal. Yeah.
Well, it was for the person who won. So the significance of the red, and you see, I've heard a lot of people say, well, that's the significance of the blood of Christ, but it really, really wasn't.
Well, that was the tradition from Mary Magdalene. Then we also have Easter bread that is cooked by the ladies, and it's really
which is well known.
Tasty. Yes,
and tell us about the Easter bread a little.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the exact tradition is. It's just a very, it's cooked in a very, you know, ingredients that you can't have during Lent. It has the milk, the eggs, you know, all those things. Some people put cheese in theirs, you know, so it's just very tasty, and it adds to the expression of joy around those days.
Speaking of expression of joy, I mean, certainly, are there any other traditions that happen around Easter that express that joy?
Yes, in the Greek custom, when you get your candle at the day of the resurrection in the church, in the midnight service, you take the lit candle home with you to your home. And as soon as you walk in your doorway on the lintel with the cross still lit, the candle still, you make the sign of the cross, and you etch that on your lintel there, and you just leave it there for the whole year. It's like a blessing.
How
and
wonderful.
Then you get to blow your candle out. But the idea is to keep the light lit, driving home, keeping it in your car, and then going into your house with the light of the resurrection.
It's really amazing. My grandparents came from a certain part of Syria, and in that particular village, and in that particular section, on Thursday night, when the Gospels are read, every time a Gospel is read, there's a knot tied in a ribbon, and then the ribbon goes on the altar until the resurrection. You carry it around as if it's another blessing as well.
Right.
Yeah. And wearing new clothes?
That's a big part of it too, especially for the ladies. Now, like someone like myself, there's not much variety, but although some priests will wear a white cassock, but the ladies shop, they get a special Easter outfit, you know. So it's big in many ways, both from the point of view of fashion as well as from the point of view of the culinary offering of the day as well.
But you might not wear a white cassock, but you do wear white vestments.
Yes, of course, to express the joy, something very festive and you know, brings a lot of joy. So it's just there's electricity in the air.
Yes.
People feel the celebration, and it's for all ages. You know, so just to stay up and be able to go to that service for midnight.
Right.
As a child, I remember how exciting that was to be able to stay up late like that and to enjoy the spirit of that particular evening.
Well, it's been a joy having you with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we're going back to Father John Abdullah and Father John Tulumis talking about that joyous time of year, Pascha.
We're talking to Father John Tulumis from the Holy Trinity Parish in Pittsburgh about the resurrection of Christ, about Holy Pascha, and now about a miracle that occurs when in Jerusalem at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Father John, now that we're all hungry and ready to feast with Father Chakis and all of that great food, tell us about the light in Jerusalem.
Well, the experience that I had as a seminarian traveling to the Holy Sepulchre was one that was preceded by some questions, and the professor that we were traveling with asked us, what is the significance? What are we going to find there? Why the empty tomb? And it really wasn't until visiting the tomb and being able to stand there in that holy presence, to see this slab and to look above and see all of the vigil lights and to see the icon of the resurrection, that we began to realize that it indeed was not an empty tomb anymore, that it is a tomb that is filled with hope, filled with anticipation, filled with joy, and filled with, annually, the miracle of the holy light. In the celebration of the resurrection in the Church of Jerusalem, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, goes into the tomb And to prove that there is no funny business going on, he is searched by guards, and they literally, as the story goes, they search every fold of his vestments, and they even check his shoes, and they make sure that he has no lighted instruments with him, no candles, no matches or anything of that sort. And he goes into the tomb, and he kneels down and he prays on the tomb of Christ. And from an eyewitness account that I have read from back in 1926 of a particular person that had witnessed this, the light appears above him, and he takes 4 bundles of candles, and they are bundled of 33 candles representing each year in the life of Christ, and he takes them and lifts them up, and this light, which does not burn anything else and which miraculously appears above him, then lights the candles, and he takes them out, and he himself keeps one, and he presents some to the other hierarchs celebrating. And that light is then taken out and given to the people that are there to celebrate in this church that is filled to capacity. Fascinatingly enough, and through the witness of our own Bishop Metropolitan Maximus, that light retains some very fantastic qualities, one of which is that it burns the candles but does not burn a hand put into it. His Eminence came back after having celebrated that for the first time at Jerusalem and said, I myself took my hand, and with the 33 candles burning, I put it into it, and my hand was not burned. Not even a hair was singed.
Before that the light for a while is not hot and is just a gift from God, a real miracle.
And miraculously, it also shoots out oftentimes from the source light and lights the candles throughout the dome of the church, which had been put out because there are no candles that are lighted prior to the service. And so it, in a sense, has a life of its own. It is given the power of the witness of the resurrection by Christ. And one of the reasons why we understand that does not burn when it comes is that it is a reflection of that same uncreated light that is spoken of by the Holy Fathers. It is also a reflection of the light that Jesus was glorified with on Mount Tabor in front of his holy apostles.
So here we have the world just reflecting something for us of what God really has and offers us and gives. People talk about there being no miracles, and here we have all these witnesses to this annual event, this movement and action of God that God gives us, I guess, because we don't have enough faith and because we need.
And I really would pray that every Christian would have an opportunity someday to actually with their own eyes witness that. But the wonderful thing about Orthodoxy is that I try to bring across to my parishioners, as I know you do as well, as Orthodox priests throughout the world, that you do not have to be in Jerusalem to witness and experience this miracle. Maybe not the holy light with your eyes as they do there, but the miracle of the resurrection is present and available for all of us, and that you do not have to be in Jerusalem, Antioch, Constantinople, or any other place in particular, but that is the universal celebration that is there for each of us who believe in the death and resurrection of Christ.
Now at Pascha, we begin the Paschal Matins and liturgy with the prostaminus, or the celebrating bishop or priest, coming with a single lamp and then sharing light from that one candle to all of the people who process out into the world, as at one time they did from the river, to bring the new catechumens to the newly baptized ex-catechumens to the church to hear the gospel. We have this procession and this movement to begin the Feast of Feasts, this celebration. And as everyone comes to receive the light from the light, from candle to candle, and they all light their candles from the presbyter, we see how God's joy and light and life is shared. And it's shared like our friendship, person to person, man to man. And it's shared in our relationships that we have with other people in the church, person to person, because God is person and he embraces us, and he shows us how to embrace each other and share his light and his life.
And that's so emblematic of our call as Christians to be evangelical and to be apostolic and to go out and to share that joy. Christ said, do not take that light and put it under a bushel. And that light includes the resurrection light. It needs to be shared. The joy needs to be for all.
Sounds to me now that Pascha and this lens that we have comes with a responsibility, a call for people to do something.
It does, and it also speaks to the fact that it is pervasive throughout our life. We see this in the liturgical cycle of the church. We see this in the various events of our life where we have an opportunity to really share in the greatness of that joy and that promise, whether it is through baptisms of children, whether it is through the funerals of our loved ones. Regardless, we have connecting points of that promise, and they are there for us throughout our lives. Also in the liturgical celebration of our church, Pascha is really not just a once-a-year celebration. It is in its unique celebration as the mother of all feasts, sure. But every Sunday we as Orthodox Christians celebrate the resurrection at the Divine Liturgy. Absolutely.
Sunday's the day of resurrection. Father John, thank you for being with us. I'm excited. Our listeners are called to see the world through the lens of God's light, and to share that light, because with that light comes real life.
Christ is risen, Father John.
Truly he is risen.
And today, we've learned what?
Tonight we've learned that Pascha, Feast of Feast, Holy Day of Holy Days, is the center of our message as Christians, is everything for us. It's our proclamation, it's our faith, it's our life.
And, you know, as Orthodox Christians, and if you happen to be someone who wants to learn more about the Orthodox faith, you can just by going to our website at orthodoxynowtv.org, or you can write us at the address on your screen. In addition to that, you can also listen to Orthodoxy Now on the radio. That's Wednesday mornings at 9:30 on 810 on your AM dial. And where can they also watch us, Father?
On TV?
That's right, on Comcast On Demand or Christian Associates Channel 95. Thank you so much for joining us, and Christ is risen to you.